Welcome to the 188th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. If you're new to this episode, I am a cardiologist, a primary care physician practicing. We have a membership practice here in Southwest Florida. I also am passionate about marathon running, ultra running, triathlon, and gardening, and getting ready for perhaps the California International Marathon in Sacramento. Prayers and thoughts are with all those people in California suffering from the wildfires. I don't even know whether the marathon will take place. That's certainly of secondary importance. Our thoughts and prayers are with all the people living in California, and I hope the air quality improves. I hope those fires go away soon and everyone finds their loved ones and the rebuilding can start. And, we love California. We live in Florida, but California is one of our favorite places to visit. And we have, lots of friends out there and wish everybody well. It's a beautiful part of the country. And it's just sad to see the devastation that people are having to undergo. So, again, thoughts and prayers to all of you. I hope we get to see you soon, but I hope we get to see you under blue skies, and I hope those come back to the beautiful state of California soon. Here in Florida, we finally are getting some cooler weather. Our hurricane season is coming to a close. It's interesting that when the hurricane season comes to close in Florida, it's kind of when the fire season starts in California. As for, I finally have the fireplace turned on tonight, and I know it's kind of funny. We're going to get down into the high 40s here, but for Florida, that's the beginning of our winter, and it's a great time for our crops to get going. We've things are starting to actually bloom a little bit, and tomatoes and peppers and so forth. The interesting thing that happened at my house this week is we had a giant beehive that was connected to the roof of my house. We heard these bees swarming around, and we looked up and we had a giant hive. The sad part about it, we had the beekeeper that has come 2 times before to remove the bees and relocate them. When he got here this time, the beehive was dry, and he thinks this part of the problem with the bees that they made this beehive, and it was literally about the size of a beach ball. And it started, it couldn't have been more than a couple weeks old. So, and then they abandoned the hive for some reason. The queen left, and it's part of the problem with the bee population that they can't seem to get a hive going, and they scatter. So it's whether it has to do with weather or pesticides in the air, or nobody really knows. But it was kind of sad when the guy got here and all the bees were gone, and we had a lot of bees that were dead around. They typically come to this area when the Brazilian pepper cherries start to bloom, and we have a composter, and that's kind of what attracts them. And we have a lot of plants that flower in the backyard, so we were really excited to see the bees. We don't want thousands of them. They were benign. They didn't try to sting us or anything, but it's kind of sad when they just up and leave. So I'm not sure about what's going on there, but it was nice to see the hive while it lasted. My training is going good. Again, we're scheduled to come out and run the California International Marathon if it takes place, and again, that's secondary to what's happening in California, but continue the strength training. And the American Heart Association came out with guidelines this week looking at exercise and fitness, and some of the new things that were added was that they recommend strength training twice a week for everyone. They also recommend, starting to make sure that children under 6 years of age have several hours of activity. Grade school kids need to have an hour through high school, need to have at least a couple hours a day of activity. And then for adults, 150 to 300 minutes a week, of moderate activity, and then vigorous activity can be, 80 to 150 minutes as long as it's vigorous activity. They also suggested that, in addition to this hour, that people get activity when they can up to 10 minutes. So if you can do 10 minutes of exercise here and there, it's a great thing. A lot of people talk about standing desk and standing up more than sitting down. And that's always a good idea, that if you have a desk job, if you can get there, make some really portable stand-up desk or stand-up devices that you can put your laptop on, and that's helpful to be able to stand up. But we have, a lot of our members, that have desk jobs. If you can get up and do some chair squats, every couple of hours, or do some calisthenics, that's always really good. In addition, this is being Thanksgiving week. We have a registered dietitian in town, Addie Dulaney. Addie, as you know, is my daughter, but also the practice's registered dietitian, and she's in for Thanksgiving and joined me for nutrition classes Monday and, Thursday and Friday of this week. So it was great having an extra assistant. So we had the three generations of Dulaney women in the nutrition class. So welcome, Addie.
Welcome, and happy Thanksgiving week, everyone.
Yeah, it was good. So yesterday, we're doing our Thanksgiving fair to try to get our members, educate them on what to do for Thanksgiving holiday. It's always a time when people tend to fall off the plant-based wagon. So yesterday we did it's actually my mother invented we call it Little Vanna because, Vanna White is the assistant on the game show. We call my mother Little Vanna because she's about 5 foot tall, but she made up a recipe for stuffing balls that obviously don't require a turkey. So we make these stuffing balls with vegetable broth and leeks and celery and a little miso. So we made those for the class, and then her cranberry salad.
Yeah, it was great. Everyone enjoyed it, and a lot of people noted it made it feel like Thanksgiving and the holidays are here.
Yeah, it was nice because, we toasted the bread. One of the things you do if you have a dehydrator and you have bread that's in the freezer, if you just put that on your dehydrator trays and put it in your dehydrator on 115, it makes wonderful croutons, and so we use that for the stuffing balls. And then, we always try to do a little bit of a pairing in class so they get a taste of something. So we did the stuffing balls with a little cranberry sauce, and it was very, very tasty. It smelled like Thanksgiving.
And all took under 30 minutes.
So another thing that's been a tradition in our house over the years is lima beans. And some people don't like lima beans, but it's been a tradition, since my grandmother, Addie, and she would cook them and she thickened them in the past with, butter and milk. But now we actually use a little almond milk and a little tapioca flour or cornstarch to thicken them. And the variety, my mother always sends us out to the grocery store to get Ford Hook lima beans. And, she always wants Ford Hook lima beans. And when I came to Florida, people talked about butter beans. And, the question is, what's the difference between a lima bean, a small lima bean, and a butter bean? So butter bean is
a mature lima bean.
Yeah, and the Ford Hook are actually a bigger lima bean, and then they call them baby lima beans. But lima bean typically are green, so obviously they're picked early. One of the interesting things about lima beans is, like a lot of beans, we always tell people to rinse the beans and take off the natural saponification. Even if you buy canned beans, because that suds type material that they make can cause some gas. But lima beans actually shouldn't be eaten raw because they contain a cyanide compound, which is part of their defense mechanism. And that's one of the reasons why in the United States we only have a couple different varieties, these small beans and these Ford Hook lima beans, which have very low levels of the cyanide. But one of the things you can do is when you cook them, don't cover them, you let all that gas escape. And as my great aunt used to say, you need to really, really cook them for a long period of time and don't rush them so they become tender. And that's where I think a lot of people mess up when they're cooking the lima beans. They don't let them get cooked so they're tender.
So they're a little dry and gritty.
Yeah, but these are really, really nice and soft. So between the lima beans and the stuffing balls and the cranberry salad, it's really a good combination.
Those definitely are three of my favorite. And then we have the traditional, sweet potatoes. We don't necessarily candy them now. We may have them with a little maple syrup and then, the cinnamon and spices and things of that nature, maybe a little pecans or walnuts on top. And then we'll have regular mashed potatoes with your mushroom gravy.
Right, and I like to use a variety of mushrooms that just cook down with some garlic and let that simmer for quite some time. So we have the mushroom gravy.
Then usually some kind of greens. I think last year we had Swiss chard,
Yeah.
as photos show.
Yeah, it's the table's fairly similar from year to year.
And then I'm always on pie duty.
Right, so there's always a pumpkin pie, and we typically make the pumpkin pie with a combination of tofu and pumpkin and pumpkin pie spices, so that sits up really nice. I don't tolerate oil, and I don't tolerate a whole lot of nuts either, so making a crust with mainly oats and letting that firm up before you fill it is an easy way to try to avoid a lot of the oil. And we don't do a turkey trot before Thanksgiving. We do a German Shepherd trot. So we'll be trotting with our 3 German Shepherds before we have Thanksgiving dinner, which is always a fun time.
Yeah, it's a nice little tradition we have. And this year we have a new goal. So at least this long run will be for a particular goal of mine. We all just signed up for an ultra trail race in northern Georgia coming up to my neck of the woods in the middle of February.
I believe that it's called Thrill in the Hills 50K.
Yeah, they have a couple other distance options, but we are going for the 50K.
So if you're in the Atlanta, Georgia area, come join us. I think the registration is up. Actually, we signed up last weekend, so we're ready to rock and roll. I like to listen to podcasts as well as record podcasts, and I was listening to an ultra podcast. It's called Trail Runner Nation, and they were interviewing Dr. Cucazzella, and he has a new book, and I hope to have him on the show. But he was talking about anybody can run. It doesn't matter what age, and you can start running at any time. A lot of people think that their knees are shot, or they've had knee replacements or hip replacements, or their doctors have told them not to run. And he was talking about, and it makes perfectly sense. People come back from the war, Iraq and Afghanistan, and they've had legs amputated. And I've run alongside people in the Marine Corps Marathon that are on prosthetic legs. And of course, the Challenged Athletes Association or the Challenged Athletes Foundation, is all about sport and rehabbing people back into sport that have had either amputations due to trauma or perhaps born with conditions or cancers that they're missing a leg, or they have prosthetic device, and these people run marathons and then nothing stops them. So why we think that a little arthritis here and there can stop you from running, it's usually about just correcting your form, perhaps changing shoes, perhaps doing strength training. And he talks about getting people back to running. And one of the examples that he gave was a guy named Dick Beardsley. And if you Google him, we'll put him in the show notes. But he actually qualified for the 1980 and 1988 U.S. Olympic marathon trials. He tied for first in the 1981 Olympic marathon. So you see, this guy's not a spring chicken. And actually, he had a traumatic farm injury that required him to get a knee replacement at an early age, and then he had some arthritis and got another knee replacement. And he's actually ran several sub-3-hour marathons on 2 artificial knees. And one of the things that he brought up on this podcast that obviously I talk to patients about is, building muscle and building bone strength. And one of the best ways to do it is through exercise and weight-bearing activities. And, when we look at people that have needed knee replacements because of arthritis, it tends to be due to a tremendous amount of inflammation. And, I alluded to it on another podcast where we heard a talk by an orthopedic surgeon who talked about looking at people's legs or the bones that, eat a standard American diet. And there's so much inflammation in the bones that sometimes they can't get these prosthetic joints to actually set up when they're trying to glue them in place because there's just nothing to glue to. The bone is so damaged and so inflamed. And obviously eating a plant-based diet changes this inflammation, and it's better for the person in the long run. But weight-bearing activities is going to cause or help make bone, and that's going to make those prostheses actually set up and work better. And last longer for people. So, being inactive is just like anything else. You don't use it, you'll lose it. And, and we know that if you don't want to run or you don't like to run, getting out and walking can certainly, walking vigorously is going to meet the American Heart Association guidelines. But there's something magical about running, that they talked about. And I have to agree, it's just not the same walking and running. When you run, your both feet are in the air. There's, endorphins and other chemicals that are released that, give you, make you feel really good. And it's a freedom to be able to move at an increased pace. And, I think it's, again, why not run? Everybody should give it a try. It doesn't have to be fast, but if you pay attention to form and strength training, it's something that everybody can do.
And it's something you can bring your dog along to do, which is something that we both really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, we have dogs of different ages, and they play frisbee, and sometimes they get a little injury playing frisbee, jumping in the air, and we, sometimes we go slow with the dogs and do a nice slow warm-up with them and get them out for the run. But it's so fun to see them really enjoying, especially this when the air is a little bit cooler. They're happy out there running, and especially on the trails. Kimba loves.
Yeah, definitely the trail running. But, any kind, anywhere that you can find a spot to hit the pavement and lace up your tennis shoes, we always encourage you to do that.
Yeah, and, again, I want to have Dr. Cucuzella on because he actually has a running store, and he's all about, minimalist running shoes and running technique. But there's a lot of information out there on chi running and good running form and, strength and conditioning and way to build up. So, certainly a lot of people go out and they want to do too much too quick, but, doing a little bit of run walk, Galloway method, anybody can get into a little bit of running. So I think it's my favorite form of exercise. I think that doing a little bit of everything, cross training is good, but I don't think there's any better stress reliever than going out for a run. So I guess the long and the short of it is do your turkey trot and keep on going and sign up for a 5K, a 10K, or a trail run. Get out and get some fresh air. There was an interesting study out of Johns Hopkins University. Well, it's not really, I don't know how interesting it is. It's one of those things like, really? Diet rather than age may cause hypertension. They report.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. They had a write-up in the New York Times as well on this article. It's crazy that, just like physicians like to deny that smoking was a problem with lung disease and heart disease, people just want to hang on to that there's no connection between diet. And it's just such a shock to find out that, eating burgers actually could hurt you. But this study actually looked at two tribes way back in the woods in Venezuela, back in the rainforest. I'm going to butcher this, but it's the Jami and the Yaquana tribes. And it turns out that the Jami tribe, there's very little input from any, researchers or outside influence, hunters or people that come in from, the developed world. And they eat predominantly, here it comes, plant-based diet. And they're gatherers, and their blood pressure runs about 95 over 63. Wow. And the Yaquamas, as they get older, there's more influence, and their blood pressure goes up into the 110s and 120s. And again, they're exposed to more of a Western diet. And, I think that it's again, no shock that what we eat actually causes damage to our blood vessels. Just because you get an ARP card doesn't mean your blood pressure should be going up. It's actually damage to the endothelial lining of your blood vessel. So if you carry the diagnosis of hypertension, you're carrying the diagnosis of vascular disease and potential heart disease. And your vasculature is not working appropriately. We know that salt's a direct toxin, as well as it causes people to retain fluid. We know that carrying around excess visceral fat stimulates the release of angiotensin, which causes vasoconstriction or narrowing of the arteries. So, what we eat is a huge contributor to diet, but also what we eat can actually reverse hypertension. Way back in the 40s, Walter Kempner would put people on the rice diet. Back at that time, there wasn't much in the way of treatment for blood pressure, little in the way of medication. So he would put them on white rice, fruit, steamed vegetables, and their blood pressure would get better. Just taking around the toxins, there would be cabbage, which is a vasodilator and nitric oxide producer in that nutrition form, and basically taking away, all the excess of salt that people consumed. So, if you have high blood pressure and you want to get rid of it, change your diet, become plant-based, and it's a really good way to get things under control. And if you're continuing to take blood pressure medications, you're not, even if your blood pressure is controlled at 130/70 and you haven't changed your diet, the disease process that caused high blood pressure is still going on. You're continuing to accumulate these toxins, the result of what you eat, what you're eating and you're metabolizing. So the disease will continue to get worse. People talk about, oh, my blood pressure medicine stopped working. Well, the blood pressure medicine didn't stop working. Your blood vessels have just gotten worse to the point where you need more medications. And, we have people that have been on, 3, 4, 5 medications, and if we radically change their diet, their blood pressure drops like a rock. If we bring people into the hospital that have really elevated blood pressure, and all of a sudden, they're not eating it for some reason, or they're eating even just the DASH diet of a hospital, their blood pressure drops like a rock. So, it really is associated with what you're eating. I had an Eastern European lady that came into the office, and she really was against taking any medications, and she just kind of got angry because her blood pressure was going up in the evening, and she just threw some beets into the blender and some cabbage and made some quick soup and drank it, and her blood pressure, dropped. It was really funny. She's like, she didn't really know what she was doing, but it that's just one of the things that she would eat. Would it be a borscht type soup? And lo and behold, her blood pressure, dropped. And that reminds me, I had borscht this week for the first time. Again, I have a couple of patients of Eastern European descent, and I've never made borscht soup, and I did, and it was fabulous, and what a great way to lower your blood pressure. I made it all in the Instant Pot. I put beets, carrots, cabbage, an onion, some ginger, a little bit of miso in the Instant Pot, covered that with water. 20 minutes later, fabulous soup. So it's a great way to bring your blood pressure down, heal your arteries, lots of antioxidants. It was a nice red color, nice on a cold winter's day. So I'd encourage anybody to look up vegan recipes for borscht soup and give it a shot.
Again, all of this is really encouraging because, we can take a little bit of the control back with our health through something as simple as what you put on your plate.
Yeah, and this goes back. You think about my grandmother had a garden, and at this time of year in the fall, the root vegetables were pretty much all that was left. So she canned a lot of beets, and a lot of people in this fall, people for Thanksgiving, beets, parsnips, carrots, cabbage. These are all winter vegetables, turnips, and they're all really, really good. As for your health, blood pressure, antioxidants, anti-cancer. So, don't forget your root vegetables when you're thinking about things. Sometimes we get stuck on, a few different vegetables, but take the time to eat seasonal and enjoy some of these root vegetables in your diet. So we had a person send an email. She's plant-based, and she knows all the reasons why she wants to be plant-based, but sometimes when you go out to dinner or you go out with friends, they start doing rapid fire questions, and you can get tripped up. And when people get tripped up, then they kind of start to doubt themselves a little bit. And she asked, like, can we just give, some rapid fire answers on, certain questions that a lot of people get when they're plant-based. You want to give me some rapid fire questions?
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Warmed up?
Warmed up.
Okay. So, as you can expect, question number one, where are you going to get your protein, Doc?
Everything. Everything has protein. People think it's just meat, but it's in my fruit in the morning, my beans, my greens. Fruit has 1 to 2 grams of protein. Simple vegetables like zucchini have 1 to 2 grams of protein per half cup, and they only have 27 calories. So in reality, you could get a lot more calories from, you get a lot more protein with fewer calories than you would with animal sources, and you don't get all the toxins. Toxins associated with meat, carnitine, eggs, choline, interact with your bacteria, increase your TMAO levels, increase inflammation, cause cardiovascular disease. They also contain sulfur, the amino acids associated with many animal proteins when they break down those amino acids, and that causes the body to be acidic, and you have to actually buffer your system. And the best way to buffer is calcium. So you actually leach the calcium from your bones when you eat a high meat diet. So that animal protein with sulfur can actually lead to osteoporosis.
Beautiful, thank you. Next, but what about your bones? Where are you going to get your calcium?
Well, my favorite is, the Kentucky Derby. It always goes on. Those horses seem to get plenty of calcium. You don't see the cows falling over in the field because mainly they get their calcium from grains and grasses. And that's where we get ours. Green leafy vegetables, our grains, oats, all our different whole grains, and as well as beans. Yeah.
And then the major culprit of diabetes, I'm sure. Why can't we have fruit? Everyone says fruit is bad.
Yeah, and it's one of the first things, when we back in the gathering days, when you're going along, you can sustain yourself. Your brain wants to run on glucose. It's a really clean burning fuel, so fruit is the best thing for that. It's associated with fiber, so it breaks down just in the right amount that it should. It does have some protein in it, but the fruit's loaded with antioxidants and phytonutrients, and because the fiber's there, you don't have this big glucose spike. It's actually just the way it's supposed to. So it's one of the best foods you can eat to get your brain the glucose that it needs, get your body the hydration after a workout, and clear out all those metabolic toxins from other things.
Well, I mean, if this plant-based thing is so perfect, then why do all you people take supplements like B12?
The reality of it is that most of the people that are B12 deficient actually eat meat because cows are on or most of the animals are raised in factory farms, and they don't have access to the dirt and the grass where the B12 are actually made through bacteria. So most people that actually need B12 supplements are carnivores or eat meat. And the reality of it is, again, with this acidity associated with eating, we can't process animal protein very well. So that's why a lot of people get indigestion and end up taking antacids. And these antacids decrease the ability for people to absorb B12. So the reality, most B12 deficient occurs in people that does eat meat. But if you are plant-based, then you should take a supplement in the form of nutritional yeast or a sublingual B12.
And why no oil? I thought the Mediterranean diet and olive oil is great.
Well, the reality of it is if you take a perfectly good olive and you squeeze all the phytonutrients and fiber out of it, and you're just left with this a liquid lubricant that's readily absorbed. It's mainly an omega-3 fatty acid that goes on to become inflammatory. And also causes direct vasoconstriction. So I don't want my vessels to constrict. I'm going to stay away from oil.
But I'm watching carbohydrates. I want to lose weight.
Well, the reality of it is your brain works essentially exclusively on carbohydrates. It's one of the cleanest burning fuels. If Usain Bolt was going to run a 100-yard dash, he's not going to run it on olives. He's going to run it on carbohydrates because it's such a clean burning fuel. There was a study that just came out, though, that I'm sure will shake a lot of people up and probably make the Times or the Time magazine. It actually stated that people on a low carbohydrate diet could maintain weight loss is one of the better ways of dieting. But the reality of it is we're not about dieting, we're about being healthy. And, if you eat a plant-based diet, you're going to be healthy as well as your natural body weight. And people lose weight quickly on a low-carb diet because they're not only taking away carbohydrates, but they're taking away junk food that contains a tremendous amount of fat. If you look at a donut, it is lard and fat and fried and sugar. If you look at a piece of cake, it's eggs, oil, and flour. If you look at a candy bar, it's a bunch of oil as well as sugars. Obviously, colas are direct sugar, but for the most part, when we get rid of junk food, we're getting rid of a combination of sugar and fat. And fat has 9 calories per gram, so that's the reason for the weight loss. So they're just basically getting rid of calories when you go on a low carbohydrate diet.
I think that about sums up our questions.
Yeah, so if you have any more of these quick fire, but a lot of times when you do go out with your friends, because they don't want to hear anything bad about their bad habits, and that's really the issue. We were talking in class today. We're at a point in society where we know that we can feed the planet on plants. It's better for the environment. It's certainly better for the animals. Everybody knows the answers to all these questions. It's just, do we want to do it? And it's kind of like smoking back in the 60s, when doctors still smoked and nurses still smoked in the hospitals. They would tell patients not to smoke, and then they would go hide and smoke. So a lot of people just want to continue their bad habits. So they want to pretend like the data's not there. They want to ignore the big giant elephant in the room. It's the last stand, so to speak, before people finally give in and become plant-based. I was, one of the last things just comes to mind is the Camerons, the director of Avatar. He and his wife, built a complete school that was completely sustainable, plant-based food there, and they're plant-based, and the whole school is solar. It doesn't have any toxic carpets or anything in it, and they were on the Tim Ferriss show, and Tim Ferriss is notably a keto kind of guy. And it seemed kind of funny that they were spouting all these things off, and there really wasn't a lot of rebuttal. And he actually apologized over and over again because he thought it was going to offend a lot of his audience, hearing some of their recommendations. But they made a really good case for being plant-based. So I thought it was kind of funny that he's never made excuses for his guests like he's made for them, and just because they were plant-based, that he thought that was going to offend people. And I think it offends people because they really know in their heart that it's not the right thing to do. And so anyway, I hope you all have a good Thanksgiving being plant-based.
Yeah, I think it's a time of year to show what we truly look for in the foods we're eating, especially when switching to a whole food plant-based diet, and how to take maybe some of the recipes, especially holiday traditional recipes that you've made, into plant-based options, and keeping those same flavors and herbs and spices and things that you may have used before to create whole food plant-based options that give your family those nostalgic tastes that they're looking for, but provide everyone at your table with a healthy experience of food.
One of the things I thought about Thanksgiving dinner is people always do that terrible green bean casserole, which I don't know why people like it or they actually even eat it, but traditionally it's made with canned green beans and those fake onions and a can of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup. So, if we do green beans and we do mushrooms and garbanzo beans with them and a little bit of miso. So that's a really tasty alternative. You can do that. You can do mushrooms, onions, and green beans. And if you wanted to make a thickening with the mushrooms, you could actually do the mushroom gravy and green beans. So those are all substitutes that is tremendously better than a green bean casserole with all the sodium and fat that's associated with the Campbell's soup thing.
And I think the first thing we noted after our first completely whole food plant-based Thanksgiving was how much better we felt after that meal. I mean, we really don't hold back on the food tastes great, you eat as much as you want for that meal, but how we weren't that miserable, stuffed. Everybody felt like they needed to go take a nap afterwards because, I mean, truth be told, we took most of the added fat, well, all of the added fat, but most of the fat out of that meal.
Yeah, and it still tasted great. So, if you do sweet potatoes, there's really no reason to have the marshmallows on top. The other thing is the macaroni and cheese. I know a lot of people I heard talk about have macaroni and cheese for Thanksgiving. I'm not sure why. But, a potato cheese sauce is a great alternative, or a butternut squash cheese sauce over pasta if you wanted to do that. And then throw some kale in there so you get some greens. Mm-hmm. So that's another option. Doing kale and sweet potatoes, that's another option. So, make your table colorful. Make sure you have plenty of oranges. And, the salad that we forgot to mention was the bok choy salad. So bok choy and pomegranates, because pomegranates are in season, and mandarin oranges with a lemon and a little bit of maple syrup as a dressing. Mm-hmm. That's a great salad and very pretty. So those are all, really, really tasty, but very colorful. There's reds and oranges and, eat the rainbow at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think, again, focus on the flavors you're looking for as well as the colors that fill your plate and your Thanksgiving spread, and treat you and your family to some health as well as the food that you're putting on the table.
Yeah, because remember, it's really all about your family. It's about being together with people that you love and enjoying their company, and being as healthy as you can as a family for as long as you can. And so by setting example either for your children or your grandchildren or your parents, it helps everybody in your family to live long, healthy lives. And that's what we hope for you on this Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so practice that other portion of wellness, the mental portion, with being extra grateful for all the health and loved ones you have surrounding you. I know that's something that we will definitely be doing. And I just wish you all a happy, healthy, plant-based Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving, and we are grateful that you all listen to our podcast. And please stop over to the website and check out drdelaney.com, and feel free to email Addie at drdelaney.com. It's ADDIE at DOCTORDULANEY, or Jami at drdelaney.com. We love to hear from you with any of your questions.
And you can sign up for our monthly newsletter that comes out in the middle of every month, always containing a recipe, some helpful hints from the doc, and practice updates.
And we have just launched the tickets for our annual nutrition conference, March 30th. 2019, a full day of plant-based nutrition and lectures, and
great food.
Wonderful location here in sunny Florida. So we'd love to have you come down for that. And so check out the fourth annual Charlotte County Plant-Based Nutrition Conference. It's on eventbrite.com, and we'll put links to the show notes in there. So also, it's a great Christmas present to buy for somebody.
Definitely.
So think about it. So happy Thanksgiving, and eat well, be well, move your body. Good night.